Let me tell you something. That right there is another extremely important strength of a trading floor because of its the power of its mimetic nature, whatever it spreads, in the sense of you start internalizing that. Okay, perhaps it's not good for your life, but as again, what helps you trading hurts your life, and what helps your life hurts you trading. Okay, but to be a prime bloodthirsty competitor, to bring that and internalize it, that deep bloodlust for performance, it's picked up from the lineage of people that come before you. Those words, that phrase, why did I miss it? What am I doing? Why am I here? Why am I stupid? I should just quit. All of that is direct verbal, that's direct what he said to me in that voice note, this trader, okay? It's not me just making the quotes up, but those exact words are the exact words our immortal Cypriot from Stamina uses himself. And you've mentioned they have a very, very strong relationship. So do you see how the relationship is also bled into the kind of language they use, the behavior they use? And it creates this positive for your trading relationship where you start behaving like a performer. Yes. Traders, welcome. Today we'll be discussing the events of Tuesday, 19th of November, 2024. And that's because we captured it in the Asymmetrist as an article called Defeating the Discombobulating Dialectic, or How to Trade the Damn Thing. In actual fact, it is part 1 and part 2, but today I'll be discussing with Alex Haywood from Axia Futures part 1, and that's because it experiences, it captures, it has one of the young bucks from the Axia floor, a trader who grew up here first as a runner and then has gone to the Cyprus floor. So we'll be experiencing that story from his side. Part 2 is also from another trader, but today we'll be discussing part 1, and that day is very interesting for many, many reasons, which you can read about in the article below if you have not already. A lot of asymmetrists have read that, of course, when it was published all the way back in November. That is because it is part of the series called The Dispatches, and The Dispatches always aims to publish and capture these kind of stories and interesting phenomena, events, and so on, fresh within days of the actual event. So all of this was published back in November, but I will be discussing it today with Alex to get his reflections, his personal takeaways, his additional anecdotes about this kind of trader, and we'll be interfacing in that way. And last but not least, before I bring on Alex, please note that all Asymmetrist readers received an ebook I compiled, which has the collected writings of everything the Asymmetrist has published from October to December, including this very piece, Defeating the Discombobulating Dialectic, Part 1. So to read the article directly, please look below. And if you are interested in this, Part 2, and everything else Asymmetrist has to offer, you are only but a subscription away, which is for free, which you can find down below. So without further ado, I will bring on Alex Haywood.
That's what's incredibly exciting. And it's almost a new type of learning mechanism for our traders on the desk at Axia, as well as traders beyond the direct Axia community. But now let's dig down into Article 1. And I think what I'd always love to start with, all parts asymmetrist are my favorite, but the real dress rehearsals when you receive that email. And what I want to, explore is when we start and you receive that email in the inbox from the asymmetrist, I just want to go through some of the key areas and the key highlights. And I might even read some elements. And I just want to elaborate a little bit further, because if you go about as a reader, reverse engineering some of the key little gold nuggets, because what Bogdan is doing is he's going direct to the source of the traders who have skin in the game, who are going through all the emotional battles that you have to go through, going through the losses, the P&L highs that happen on a day, the P&L reversals, and all the emotional spewing and the monkey mind that goes through you. And so in those moments, what are the deep lessons? And so this is one of Bogdan, the asymmetrist primary, is to unearth these stories that you, as a trader at home, will understand that, man, I've been in a similar situation. This is how this trader resolved it. I can add that into my arsenal of toolkits and tactics that I can deploy the next time I'm faced with a similar configuration of events. But if I were to, when you receive the email, as I mentioned, the email, so you can actually collect on the Asymmetrist, the newsletter and the archive. I'm just have the screen popped out. I've just highlighted some key areas before we go into article part 1, some of my favorite. The series, the Asymmetrist as a whole, isn't here for the unusual, for the usual, but the unusual. That's where the best learning takes place. It's what I speak about on our training floor and our training workshops here in Cyprus now, where I'm building out a team in Cyprus, we always dissect the anomalous. The anomalous is what the narrative cognition does better than any machine or any AI, because it consistently discounts the anomalous. It's what moves us forward. It's what makes us, when we're faced with a situation and all the options will not work, we can think of an option that has never been thought of before, because we can kind of project that type of future. And so that day, and the Russia-Ukraine, an event that's been going on since 2021, and there've been multiple trade opportunities over the last 4 years. And if he says, if anything, numerous scientific breakthroughs come from one annoying anomaly. The exception you just can't ignore. And that's, a lot of the information that we've, learned also through Angus Fletcher and our work with him. We had him out in the Bahamas through our high performance elite workshop. And so this is the same that happens with all those great inventors. And for me, this just teed it off, is that we're going to, as we read this article, we are going to be uncovering some of the anomalous understanding. We're going to be challenging many conventional thoughts. And that's what this article, and you saw it, the title, which I saw, that there are too many multiple syllables that my mind and my mind connecting to my verbal side sometimes scrambles up. But the dialectic element is so fascinating in this one. And so that that was the first little area that I wanted to bring to the attention. And then the other one, which is effectively the dialectic that you spoke about, and you put it so well in the article, there was a considerable outperformance from apparently the impossible species, the technical trader. That morning, and you remember, Bogdan, that morning, when we started seeing some of our top technical traders outperforming the news traders, because the way the news was dropping was not unraveling the market like a news trader likes to see. And what was happening, this technical trader just needed a flow excuse to unleash violently his size into the German bond market because of a profile structure. And so that unleashing, because he's skilled in the technical landscape, but is equally as skilled in the macro environment, and that hybridizing of the skill sets. And I think, it'd be great for you just to explain your perspective of what you've seen for, older school traders who've unable to evolve this so-called dialectic, as you expressed it. If you can just elaborate, because I find it fascinating how you brought that across in this article.
Yes, and well, to sort of slightly spoil the article, but there's a lot of strands that culminate. It's like there's a bit of a watershed that leads from part one to part two. But yes, when I mention dialectic, or I talk about dialectic, it's in a very simple terms of, there's a thesis, there's someone saying one thing or doing one thing or acting in one way, and there's the opposite, the counter argument, the antithesis or antithesis. And the dialectic fights and pushes and prods, and then you have the synthesis, right? The culmination outcome, and you can expand that on scale. You can have that, the synthesis, the cathartic experience of someone when they have two inner battles, or you could expand that between two different camps that fight each other. For example, the dogmatic fundamentals only to the dogmatic chartists only, who think news trading or news is irrelevant, it's all priced in, blah 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 blah. And it's one of my pet peeves that you constantly see this, people getting lost in these constant arguments, wherever, especially in the social media side. And it's sort of making the case that the practitioner, just uses the synthesis, the best of both, and takes what tools he can and moves forward with it. And you see this on a bigger scale throughout the development of the prop industry in the past 2 decades. People who come from very staunch charting backgrounds, people from very staunch trading news in a specific kind of way, and then those who are able to adapt. So those who've displaced, more importantly, Alex, those who displaced those people from before are a synthesis of something new, meaning they just as well use profile charts and news trading, but these people used to be on the fringes, right? and they have displaced the people, the classic being the disruptor in any field. And then it's looking ahead and understanding where's the new synthesis, or where the new arguments and fighting, and that person who's synthesizing is the trader of tomorrow, and that's they're coming in from the fringes and resolving the dialectic, as it were.
Yeah, and that displacement, I mean, we've seen it. I've been involved in the prop space for approximately 20 years now, and that displacement is a function of this just a dogma that's hangs around for too long. And sometimes that dogma can hang around too long, and when you're wanting to adapt, you've potentially have run out of financial resources. But there's always that fine line. But now, if I go and thank you, Bogdan, what I want to do now is I want to now climb into the article, and I'm going to. This is the most wonderful word art over here: defeating the discombobulating dialect, or just trade the damn thing. Part 1. Absolutely love it. I mean, you always know when you receive a piece from Bogdan, you're also going to become a little more highbrow in your English language. Now, the storytelling here is just fantastic. And before we start, I want to speak a little bit about this trader. Now, this is a trader. Okay, he's in school. From some of the background I know him, he was an oversized rugby oaf at a young age. Was 6 foot by the time he was 13, running over all the other 13-year-olds. And so didn't really receive much friction on the rugby field until all the other kids started catching up. And then he started understanding, wow, I have to be more skillful than running over people. And then all these other peripheral skills. And with that friction, you develop these skills. But what's also what we love at Axia, we develop many traders who come on as runners. Some of our most successful traders have come on the floor as runners. And what's so fantastic seeing a runner is that a run on a trading floor has one of the most great opportunities, if they use the opportunity right, to be and if you have a fairly decent social IQ, to go about socially engineering strong relationships with experienced guys. Because as a runner, you're making coffee for the Greeks. You collecting food at halftime from delivery shipped to the front door, and you're delivering that off. And there's that thank you conversation. And over that span, if you are a smart young runner, and you come from a deep sense of humility and interest, but are hungry for learning, our top junior traders have an incredible ability to have developed a network with some of the senior traders, and the best junior traders develop a network with a diversity of edge. And this is important because if you just develop a network with 2 people that resonate with you, not creating any uncomfort or friction in other areas where you're weak, you are going to come short perhaps later in your game. You can still make a very handsome career. And so this junior trader, seeing him as a runner, I remember the early days. He didn't have much IT, but he solved problems. So he was always solving problems. He didn't know much about setting up a computer graphics card, but he would figure out very quickly. A self-starter, and that's then translated in him developing over a period of a year and a half some really strong relationships. Where actually at the moment he has an incredibly strong relationship with one of our best 8-figure traders, where they communicate on a daily basis about plays. He's contributed towards him from a technology perspective. So the elite trader has given him a lot of understanding on markets, narrative, structure, all that unconscious competence that comes with a highly skilled profession. But what the junior trader brings is this competency in some technology that an older trader might not have. And so he's upskilling the senior trader with regards to technology efficiencies. And so hybridizing those types of junior to senior skill sets becomes quite a profound relationship and a symbiosis. And so this article now, you went, Bogdan, and you tracked him down. He had I think approximately a 20K day. Do you just want to elaborate, just without giving away, the entire article? And I'll go through some of my, after you answer, you tracking down, I'll go through some of my favorite parts of the article.
Yes, I feel very lucky because it's very often no more than me asking, hey, that was such an interesting day. Let me know how you approached it, how you tackled it. And in this case, with the trader, I wish it could have been done in person, but he is in Cyprus. So there's only so much we can do physically. But yes, he gave me a huge set, like, a brain dump of voice notes captured in the heat of the moment. It was of that evening, so he traded it the same day. And within the evening, I got all his voice notes. It's an amazing thing to go through. And then it's then understanding it from a writing perspective. How can I put that effectively in making it both useful and interesting, and for the piece. So in this case, it was very simple. It was just me reaching out to him. We know each other a long time, and it was no more than that. Other times there's a bit more logistics involved. But yeah, I mean, it's his growth is remarkable.
Well, I
known
mean,
him ever since he
you
was a
and
runner.
Bogdan,
Yeah.
you've known him for I'm not quite sure, since 2021 potentially. You've known him, and then you went on your sabbatical, your
Yes.
trader, the book sabbatical, and so
Yes.
you've come back. You came back to having access to the risk screen,
Mm-hmm.
to the Axia risk screen of 130 plus traders, where you can observe, you can check in, seeing how the traders are performing. And so, what was that like, seeing that gap in time? The trader that you knew back then versus the trader, were there some elements of surprise? All due respect to all the traders that have made, I've come across with traders I thought would never make it, they made it. And I get proven wrong a lot of the time. Some traders who I thought, how are they going to make it? They didn't make it because they just didn't have one element of resilience that is important. And so what was that like for you? I mean, I don't know if you consciously were aware of it, or maybe there was subtle conversation behind the scenes, so you gradually knew his journey. But when you went on your book sabbatical and coming back and seeing the type of performances that he started putting in.
Resilience is definitely a word I would use for him, 100%. Secondly, what was very interesting as well, having that before and after, and a very, very dramatic before and after, like to the point where if you hit, if you hit his name, let's say in some sort of test or whatever, and you ask me, can you identify the traders or whatever, just based on their personalities, based on the fluctuations and the flows and everything else, something that, Mario can do very, very well, I think. If you gave me that test, I would not be able to identify the before and after 100%, and in a good way. And actually, taking one very important observation from you, Alex, consolidation is a marker on the road to mastery. And I think that was starkly evident for me when I could see how he went. If there's one thing that was lacking before I went on my secret cave retreat for a while, doing some more writing. Yes, it's just a remarkable ability to consolidate all of a sudden. That for me was like immediate, like I could see that very dramatically. And then somewhere along the line, it'll be very interesting to dig deeper with this trader in particular, for the Asymmetrist or related projects. If what led, I probably already know the answer to this, but what led to that emergence of that ability to consolidate? And you can see how that plays out into his P&L, into his growth, and so on. And again, it'll be very interesting to see what the next marker is as he goes from 6 figures and above, rather than from no account, down account, that very difficult keeping your head above water period to that 6 figures.
Yeah, and speaking about down account, up account, just the emotional journey that you have to expose yourself, questioning how you're going to get above black and start drawing your account and start, being able to financially support yourself. And that is that road of resilience. But along that road of resilience, is your ego increasing and your learning mind decreasing? Because that's what generally happens to most people. Whereas if you are that 1%, during that time, your curiosity is still peaking. It's still at its highest point on the curve. Like, if someone's made money on an area, or a trader who has outperformed, you want to know why. You understand why this market moved, instead of licking wounds that I haven't made money for another day, and all the wrong type of questioning that could come inside of you. But looking back at this day, and we're not going to go into the details of the Russia-Ukraine so on, but I just want to highlight some key areas that I think that I'd like to bring the reader's attention to. When you read this article again, you just go into asymmetrist.com, you sign up with your email details, and you're able to read these articles that Bogdan has produced. So when we look at the article and we go into the detail, is the first element is that I've highlighted. The Bund's rally, for instance, have occurred if the headline Putin approves updated nuclear doctrine had emerged under different market structure and participant positioning. And you mentioned this, early on. And again, by this time, it just so happens that the Bund's structure and participants are positioned in such a way that probabilities favor the upside. And a risk-off danger headline comes up and causes momentum calamity. And this is, you mentioned that chicken and egg situation is the flow creating the news or the news creating the flow. The easiest job for those journalists out there, those financial journalists, at the end of the day, as long as there's been a move, they can attach a story, you can come up with the most elaborate. But traders in real time, with skin in the game, need to make this judgment. And so why many traders, including our junior traders, struggled in that morning is because it wasn't a headline, it was a more nuanced headline. It was a headline that they'd probably heard over the past week. And so how are you going to tackle this? Because sometimes the market, because of the positioning, just needs something, or something just happens that then thinks that the news is important. And that's what you're really tackling in this article. And something that our top traders who can understand, and what we saw in the article on the Trump election night of how the order flow traders are performing. And this first part of the trade was exploring exactly that, and how you're having to deal with all the elements and all this small talk and all the monkey mind chatter that's going in your head whilst you're putting on positions, trying to work out this is important, understanding the landscape. So there's all these multiple questioning elements that are going through your brain at that time that you have to navigate, and you have to then overcome to execute a really high profile trade. And so technical trading, or rather the successful technical traders, are those with an explicit framework, one that filters and shapes their understanding of market activity. And in Axia's case, this is strongly tied to the market profile and market auction theory. And that's why our senior trader in that morning, who's a market profile aficionado, was able to leverage so significantly. And it's the same with one of our traders yesterday in the morning, where almost the same circumstances over the Trump.
Yes, yeah.
Almost the exact same circumstances over the morning Trump, where it wasn't quite going, but because he could lean on the technical landscape in the DAX and the Eurostoxx, and we'll be speaking about this again in the future, was able to deploy significant size, even though the news was a little bit tricky in its first order flow reaction. Now, you could be a news trader where news comes out, market reacts, easy. That skill level, what it requires is being aware of the fundamental landscape. Your order flow skill set doesn't need to be so significant. Whereas it doesn't go immediately. How effective is your order flow reading and technical ability? And that then therefore works itself to the other side of the edge spectrum. So, and just capturing, you're going in through, into detail between navigating these two skill sets, right? And then, this is a trader we described earlier. So, he grew up as a runner on the London floor and now cruises in his ever-present white trainers. Describing this typical trader, young yet not junior, now armed with enough power and consistency to have 20 to 40K days when the order flow sings. And so this is the rites of passage, the optionality that he's created himself to be able to have these 5-figure trades. His big goal this year is to have a 6-figure trade. How is he going to be doing that? What size does he need to deploy? What type of setup does he require? But he's also the future of trading from a discretionary side, of how he's amalgamating his connectivity with the relationships that he builds on the floor, with the utilization of the technology and some of the modern technology available, where you don't have to be a programmer, but you can use these large language models to now become more efficient at your game. And then understanding that human anomalous element, our ability to spot exceptional information, which you have described through some key chapters in the book that we'll be releasing in March, but as well in these two articles. And so the amalgamation of using technology and amplifying that human ability to spot exceptional information no machine can is what you really dig down. And what I love, just going through this first article in the part 1 or the part 2, is you start going into, you have a question, there's an interview, there's a Q&A session here. You start going to the mechanics of the trader's thinking. And for any of our junior traders on the Axia desk, man, I would reverse engineer this article if I really want to get good. Because you reverse engineer, you then ask more profound questions to the other senior traders around the desk. And so how are you going about reading this, distilling it, and as you mentioned earlier on, consolidating to then generate high quality questions? Because when I read this and I think about back in 2004, if I had this quality of literature for my futures trading space, you're only going to improve. The only thing I had was The Alchemy of Finance, George Soros, and some of his great trades during the Asian flu financial crisis, pre-2000. And, this is a typical, northern humor, not even a joke. I went to the kitchen to fill up my water. I just hear something around the corner. So I ran back in. How many times we heard this story, Bogdan? The traders yell out headlines, Ukraine and America activist missile for the first time.
Absolutely. I mean, as one of the traders famously put it in on our book project, traders can take some of the most expensive bathroom breaks in history.
I mean, sure. I had one trade, 2016, who just joined us. At the time was, a 30 to on a good day, 30 to 60K trader, and in the space of a week, he was at his desk 10 hours, 11 hours a day. Mm-hmm. He'd go to the toilet once for 1 minute, and somehow that each minute for 3 times in 1 week probably cost him 200K.
Absolutely. And look, this is actually fantastically important, Alex. And this is the other thing. Of course, I know I mentioned it slightly before. And this is, I think, one of the interesting and extremely important things to capture with asymmetrists as well, which is, it's like, if you boil it down to very sanitized and very abrupt, like bullet points of like strategy, okay, like I did this, right? But like so much gets lost in that white space of, okay, I had to do this strategy. I don't know. I had to be waiting for something for 12 hours, blah, blah, blah. That's not something you can just skip over. I mean, if you sanitize it down to, okay, I'm an event trader, that gets lost in translation. But those 12 hours of how you behave can determine everything, even more than the strategy itself. Whether you're like, okay, I'm just going to watch Netflix now. And then you don't watch the flow, and that could have clued you in massively. Or you're not too alert, and then you're talking to someone and then something happens. Or it's a lot, this like the physical part of trading. And I think that's extremely important to capture. And that's also why I was really excited to capture, stamina.
The toilet, the first opening line.
Yes. The immortal Cypriot. And the immortal Cypriot was being his immortal self by going to a concert at the Royal Albert Hall. And then, he basically pulled an all-nighter and then another one just to go from the Albert Hall to get his trade in, his Japanese election trade. And one affects the other. You can't isolate. It's a dereliction of, shall we say in quotation marks, biographical duty to say, okay, this trader did this in his career, he did that in his career, blah blah blah. But like, there's so much stuff lost in the white space, and that's crucially important. A lot, like, and this is what I mean, Alex, or something you always say is like, just by being on the trading floor and just observing people's habits and practices of that trader strategy. Okay, he's hyper aware around these points. He's not doing everything. He's not doing these things. He's not just grabbing a coffee and putting it on the trade and putting it in a stop order and the limit order, and then just like, I don't know, watching Netflix or going outside and coming back to, to begin with, that doesn't exist, right? Point one. Point two, but like, you can conjure up your ideas of, when you're a new trader or a developing trader, that these are things that are done, or people tell you that, but like in reality, you just don't see that done. There's a lot of things learned just through that observation. And that's why I really want to, like, even sometimes I would say, like, just very naturally, if you get onto a conversation, a lot of people would skip these things because they think it's not relevant. You ask a professional footballer how they kick a ball, the mechanics of it, and be like, well, I don't know, I just lift my leg, I kick it, ball goes there. Yeah, but there's a lot of connecting parts in between.
I mean, Bogdan, you put it so well, the sanitized, love that. You pick up a textbook, you have a training, but what the asymmetrist brings is everything that comes before, after that commitment, whether it's, as you mentioned, toilet or no toilet breaks, traders sometimes even thinking of putting, during an election night, having a catheter inserted, like just to make sure that they don't miss, because the pain of missing sometimes is tremendous, and it has emotional consequences for the traders. Now, some traders are significantly better at dealing with those, but I think the ones that affects the traders the most are the ones that are so committed at the desk. When they do have to have that break, they feel that pain so tremendously because they know the commitment that came beforehand, and that one little moment where they leave, and they even know when to leave. They have certain times that they won't leave the desk. Certain times on the minute or the quarter past, they have their structure of when they do it. You're not going to pick that up in a textbook, but you can pick that up in a story.
Absolutely.
And so just, Bogdan, so then you in this article, you go into some Q&A, and the question, it wasn't his best P&L day today, but he still put up a 20K. How did this happen? And so, you break it, says, I did okay in the end because I missed the first nuclear doctrine warning. It's, and that, and you mentioned, it really pissed me off. It hurts me. The best traders, emotionally, you wouldn't coach this, emotionally, psychologically, but it hurts them when they feel they've missed something because they have this competitive side inside of them. Why did I miss it? And when I started to miss the second one because of being in the wrong markets, I had to adapt. And I love this, when you enter, because I can just imagine his character. There's a few characters that we have in the firm that would say these types of lines. What am I doing? Why am I here? I should quit. I'm stupid. Listen, this is, many times the hyperbole, right? We see these traders mentioned. But do you have anything, to say about that, Bogdan?
Yes, I look. So 100%, it can be, hyperbole or cliche. But let me tell you something. That right there is another extremely important strength of a trading floor because of its the power of its mimetic nature, whatever it spreads, in the sense of you start internalizing that. Okay, perhaps it's not good for your life, but as again, what helps you trading hurts your life, and what helps your life hurts your trading. Okay, but to be a prime bloodthirsty competitor, to bring that and internalize it, that deep bloodlust for performance, it's picked up from the lineage of people that come before you. Those words, that phrase, why did I miss it? What am I doing? Why am I here? Why am I stupid? I should just quit. All of that is direct verbal. That's direct what he said to me in that voice note, this trader. Okay, it's not me just making the quotes up, but those exact words are the exact words our immortal Cypriot from Stamina uses himself. And you've mentioned they have a very, very strong relationship. So do you see how the relationship is also bled into the kind of language they use, the behavior they use, and it creates this positive for your trading relationship where you start behaving like a performer. Yes, you start behaving like a performer. You start acting like a performer. You start talking like a performer. And there's these little like nuggets that you can see in people. The way they speak, the way they approach themselves. And again, something I talked about in Cut in Time, the very first Dispatches article that we talk about. Presence at the desk. It's quoting you directly. Like all the greats that you've seen of your generation. The thing that you saw with them is that they have presence at the desk. You just feel it's again, you just have to see it to understand it. Like you just feel that they're engaged there full force. They're not, and then they often end up, speaking the same and acting the same. Another example, consider some of the young grads that we've observed with one of the traders in the Poland office. Do you not remember how a lot of the younger guys were copying him, even in jokes, even in his way of being? It's like they're emulating themselves on him. That doesn't crudely restrict itself to one little area. It's sort of like, stretches far more into
the mimicry of all.
Yes. And that's a huge thing, which again, just by being on the floor, you start being that way. However, the downside to that in the very long run is the danger that you can also end up being dogmatic like everyone else on your floor. So it's having the ability to synthesize but have remain your own person and evolve organically from there.
Yeah, and I mean, the bloodlust for performance, Bogdan. Blood. Yeah, sorry.
And let me ask you, Alex, and you're right. Speaking about bloodlust of performance, this trader that we're talking about here, this our young trader from Nottingham, who's in his white trainers on the Cyprus floor. is he as emotional as he was since day one, if not more?
Yeah, I mean, he's
He's an
rational.
emotional guy. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and yeah. Sorry,
No
continue.
one would
Yeah.
be surprised to describe him as an emotional guy. We're probably downplaying his emotional state by saying he's an emotional guy. But nevertheless, he is an emotional guy. And again, he's very emotional. The person who has a very good relationship are are immortal and emotional Cypriot. And again, it's understand like again, if they would relay all of this to you, let's say talking to you, or like they would write down how they trade, they would leave all this out. And it's not them leaving it out because for bad reasons, but they just wouldn't think it's relevant. But again, that's highly, highly relevant because it's to breaking your expectations about what's anomalous. And right now, to the mind of a retail trader, to the mind of someone who's grown up, it's not their fault, but there's this pervasive idea, this dogmatic attitude that a trader has to be this paragon of silence, of being a librarian, of being super zen and controlled. There are those traders too, but they're not the only traders, and that you'd have every variety. And as you said, Alex, is even with all the experience you have yourself, and I've also to an endless amount of traders who have also had a very long career. What are the identifiers or markers of people who will make it and not make it? They might have their own ideas, but ultimately it boils down to it's practically impossible because you have the entire wide spectrum. You have those who are extremely emotional, off the floor, on the floor, or they behave very differently on the floor, and those people who are indeed actually just they trade like they're more like librarians when they trade, in terms of not making any sound, and they're very, very calm. And again, this is one of the most important things to capture, because for you to break expectations of that reader who may not be aware of this, and to realize that actually this is actually probably more of a normal state. In fact, you being so calm and collected is probably abnormal in our environment to begin with. But everyone thinks it's the other way around. They just think like, oh, if you're like super emotional, and that makes you a rarity, as opposed to you see what I'm getting at. And so this is what these are the things I wanted to capture with this trader as well.
Yeah, and just quickly elaborate just a touch on what you've mentioned is you do have that spectrum, and however we want to, there's no complete bold distribution. Your distribution could be so different. And an individual trader who is highly emotional outside of life, who then becomes highly emotional inside of trading, that might not work for him. Okay, it actually fragments him even further. Where you could have a trader who's a high, you speak about it in the book, Jekyll and Hyde. You could have a trader who's incredibly calm outside of life, but then when he comes into his Colosseum, his gladiatorial moment where he needs to perform, he needs to harness whatever will make him perform. And that's using certain elements of emotion, pain. Emotions, Angus Fletcher mentions, it's our ancient growth tools. It's telling us something if we want to listen to it, and how we galvanize and use it, in a state of war, and, stomping your chest as you're going out into a field battle is to intimidate the opposition. So some of it is so archaic and DNA controlled, but some people don't know how to control that heightened emotions. It can certainly be trained. Whereas some traders are maybe a little bit emotional outside of life, and therefore in life they're more Zen-like because that just works for them. And so therefore, one man's poison is another man's medicine. So you have to understand yourself as a coach. You need to understand the trader. You need to understand what they operate, how they use pain. So the immortal Cypriot is a master of generating pain for himself, that he then creates a lesson and an evolutionary adaptation point for himself the next time he comes to the trading desk the next day.
Absolutely. I've best well put, Alex.
Yeah. So just to finish up, because I know we've just spoken about, and I think I'm just at that last little paragraph that I wanted to share. After Am I stupid? We can just imagine him, echoing these words. I can imagine the voice note. The P&L is just fine, but now I'm at a place in my career trying to push and push for bigger days. I can tell you just a little side story. So his mentor, the immortal Cypriot, spoke to him just before Christmas and saying, "What are you doing here? You're consistent. We doubling your clips across the board." He's saying, what is holding you back? What type of account are you waiting for? No opportunity waits for a certain account balance. If it's time to push, it's time to push. If the opportunity environment is there, you push, we increase your size, we get aggressive. And so he's now been almost programmed on aggression with his edge because he has edge. It's normally the other way around, where people are hopeful, they're losing, they don't have edge, and then eventually they double up, triple up because they just become hopeful, and the bad emotional state is taken over. Now he's got to galvanize and believe in himself. It's a stage of belief. Is now that you have an edge, don't stick around. Don't stick around to just increase your account by 10% a month. You want to grow 2x. If the opportunities are there, you've seen this type of opportunity landscape before, you've seen the configuration of these setups before, how are you increasing your size and going from a 10K day to a 40K day to your first 6-figure day? And so that's and that's how I want to close off on, from my side. So anything else from you, Bogdan, on this article? I just, for all the readers out there, those who've subscribed, you've read it. For those who haven't, and you on your journey of wanting to fulfill your potential, incredible amounts of both tactical and psychological nuggets.
And a lot of what is said, again, just a bit further down, Alex, the way the article closes off, it's someone that I literally spoke to this morning, another trader who's on that floor, tailing close behind this trader, how he's also had a very good P&L day on the Jan 6th Washington Post tariff sources. He literally said again, I feel like I've underperformed regardless of P&L. And I think, again, here's another marker. The word is reflective of someone that's reached a certain psychological milestone, of someone who expects to perform. Okay, that they in turn will always say, but I did this, and this. Oh, but I feel like I underperformed. And it's interesting how, from my perspective, when I approach these people and be like, oh, wow, it's an incredible day, interesting day, tell me more. They feel kind of not deflated, but they feel like, oh, but why do you care about little old me? I just, I underperformed, but like, they'll always underperform by definition. And you kind of want that, kind of. And again, help your trading hurt your life. This constant state of anxiety where you feel like you've underperformed, okay, probably isn't great for you, but it's what you want to see in a trader, which is why on the flip side, sometimes you kind of do want to see, okay, maybe not necessarily one emotion in everyone, but what you don't want to see is that person who's in an emotional state over time suddenly becomes very sort of dead and cold and non-reactive. Because I've, again, talking to someone about this as well, another person for the book, is that they felt personally when he sees that on the floor, it means they've actually truly given up. And you can imagine that with a lot of athletes as well,
All of a sudden, the life force has been sucked out of you just through your practices, your belief framework. And that life force then makes you Zen, but the wrong Zen.
Yeah. So you want to see more racket smashing. And if you stop smashing your rackets, that's probably
John McEnroe. Yeah. Listen, I have traders who are Zen and have made multiple. Like I mentioned before, you have to understand how you work, and that can take many years at a trading desk to really understand who you are and how you lever your emotional tools or the emotions that trigger you, and then how you manage those emotions. The majority of people in this game don't know how to handle their emotions and don't know how to take the cues from their emotions and what to do with them and how to transform. It's the transformer that you're using. So it's that emotional signal and then how do you use it? And what is that going to generate? What will that generate from an activity from your perspective?
Absolutely. Many thanks to Alex for his wonderful reflections and anecdotes about our young golden-haired young buck from defeating the Discombobulating Dialectic Part 1 and all the other themes and ideas we discussed there. Now, if you'd like to get a jump start on Part 2, you can do so by following the link down below. However, I highly recommend that you download an ebook I compiled for the Asymmetrist, which has all the writings the Asymmetrist has published from October to December 2024, and I will get you up to speed with everything up to the date of this recording, and you can see how everything sort of ties in much nicer. Again, it is a free subscription. You just have to be a subscriber to access that ebook. Thank you very much, guys, and see you on the next video with Alex for Defeating the Discombobulating Dialectic, or Just Trade the Damn Thing Part 2. Thank you.